You have certainly have one interesting story. Um, Born in Montgomery, Alabama, in the 1940s and 1950s, you were raised. Um, can you just what was that like growing up in the deep south of Montgomery, Alabama, during the civil rights movement with all that was going on down there?
Well, it was interesting. If you were an African American um, in the South during that time, we were called black people. No, I'm sorry, Negro. Um, there was an unspoken kind of rule going on, so you knew what you could and could not do, and no one had to tell you that. It was sort of passed down through osmosis, I guess, because we just did what we were supposed to do. The bus boycott was the first thing that happened for me in Montgomery, Alabama, when I was a teenager. That December 1st, 1955, was the day that Rosa Parks was arrested. December 5th started the bus boycott. That was a Monday following her arrest and her getting out of jail, that kind of thing. And so they organized and they put that whole thing together. Well, shortly after, well, actually on the 1st, I have to tell you this story because some of us got together and some of us kids and put our pennies together and bought a dozen eggs. And they parked the buses in the Alabama State College perimeter of the college. Mm-hmm. And so we had to walk through there to get home, so we threw eggs at the bus.
Obviously, you had some emotion towards that, like you said, with the eggs. That was your first, really
active thing that I did.
Right, active thing on December 1st. Now, this December 1st will be 61 years. It'll be the anniversary. Correct. From that event. How would you say that this movement by Rosa Parks affected you?
Well, it affected me because she was one person, and she took a stand. She was sick and tired of what was going on, and she decided, I'm not going to do this anymore. I want to take a stand. And she just encouraged me, and it showed me that one person can really make a difference. And so that sort of stuck in the back of my head from then on. And so the things that I get involved with, no matter what the activity is, it's like whatever I do as an individual to make things better or to make changes in a particular situation, one person can actually make a difference. And just to add, yes, to talk a little bit about the League of Women Voters and the reason why I work with them is because of my experience trying to become a voter in Montgomery and knowing the importance of voting. I try my best to make sure that everybody that I know who's old enough is registered to vote.
Certainly.
In the 70s, I ran for Albany School Board. And what I learned as I went door to door was that so many people, with children especially, were not registered to vote. And so I have voter registration forms, and I would go around and make sure that people were registered. On my street where I lived initially, when I lived in Albany, they were all homeowners, but there were like 23 families, and they all had kids. Okay. So every year when somebody turned 18, I'd make sure I'd go to that child and have them registered to vote. Right. And actually, even now, I carry my voter registration forms in my car because you never know who you're going to meet, and you get to talking about something political, and they'll say, well, I don't vote, and you can convince them that they need to vote. So if I've convinced them that they need to vote, then I need to register them. So I go to my car and get a registration form and have them registered to vote. So that's one of the things that I love to do in life, is to make sure that people are exercising their right and their privilege to be a voter in these United States of America.
Certainly. And so that all happened in your earlier childhood, teenage years, would you say?
Yeah, I was 16 years old.
16.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
At what age did you move to Albany?
Well, it was in 1963.
Okay.
Well, initially, let me back up a little bit, because when I turned 18 or 19, somewhere around there, this is back in Montgomery, I went to register to vote. And of course, you had to take a test, and you had to pay $5 to take that test.
And that was a lot of money back then, right?
It was like paying $5,000, really. So maybe not that much, but it was a lot of money. A lot of money,
right.
$5. So I got my $5 together. I went to take you have to pay the money first, and then you get to take the test. Well, I didn't pass the test. And so I asked the person that was administering the test, what questions did I miss? And he said, well, never mind, Gail, you just get out of here, you didn't pass.
What were the tests like? What were they?
Basic civic questions. You know, how old did the person need to be in order to run for president? Questions like that, you know.
Did they tell you who was grading the test? Were they fair? Or?
No, they didn't tell me who was grading the test. They didn't tell me how many of the questions I missed.
How many you had to write to pass?
Right.
Yeah.
None of that. I got none of that. I took the test. I was told I failed, and I left.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And I mean, I wasn't around during the time. Most of my students and fellow students weren't around at that time, but for someone that went through this and was segregated in the 1950s, just I couldn't imagine what it would be like. It certainly must have been difficult.
Yeah, it was very difficult, and it was and there was a lot of anger and hatred towards us just based on the color of our skin, and just as it's always been in America. I can remember people riding the bus and seeing it happen. You know, you hear people say, well, maybe it didn't happen, you just heard someone say that. But I've seen a black man get on the bus, put his dime in to ride the bus and get off, and the bus driver drive away and leave him. So that's just hatred and anger right there. It has nothing to do with anything. He paid, but he couldn't ride the bus, and he was probably late for work, and I don't know if he lost his job, but I've seen that happen more than once.
That's terrible.
I've seen happen where there was people walking down the sidewalk, and the black child that was walking on the sidewalk, if a white person was meeting them, would have to step off on the ground in the grass or the dirt so they could walk by and couldn't look in their eyes. So things like that is just, it's amazing that humans would treat other humans that way. You know, for me, I'm basically a spiritual person, and I believe that God made us all. And I can't imagine all equal, and I can't imagine that anyone could go to church on Sunday and practice a religion and then come out and kick people off the sidewalk or drive off and leave them and take their money if they paid their fare. So it's just, those are just a couple of simple things, but I've seen people you know, get beaten and kicked, and have a couple of instances where family members were hanged for something that wasn't even necessary.
And that was,
you know,
like by citizens, like that was civilian.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
And what would like the cops do back then
for a black person? Nothing.
Yeah, nothing.
No.
They would just turn the cheek.
Yeah, or pretend they didn't see it.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's just systemic.
It's sad.
It's not something that just started. It's been going on forever, with African Americans being discriminated against based on the color of their skin.